Let's talk about page 2 of project 6. So we've got two questions, and the first one asks us, the total number of periods for a 2.5-year CD compounded monthly is. So notice that this question does not even involve this table. Okay, we do not need to use the table to answer this. So we're looking for a certain number of periods for a 2.5-year time period compounded monthly. So for example, if I said the total number of periods for a 1-year CD compounded monthly, well, that's just asking how many times per year will a CD be compounded if it gets compounded monthly? Well, 12 times, right? Because there are 12 months in a year. If I wanted to know for a half year, so let's say I wanted to know the total number of periods for a half-year CD compounded monthly, well, I would know that would be 6 because there are 6 months in 1/2 of a year. So you're just going to approach this similarly, but you're not asking yourself for 1 year or 1/2 year, you're asking 2.5 years. So the question you're asking yourself is, if I'm compounding monthly, how many times will I compound over a 2.5-year period? Or in other words, how many months are in 2.5 years? Now the second question says, the annual yield exceeds the annual interest rate for a CD of $2,000 with a minimum term of how many years? So we're looking at annual yield, and we're looking at annual interest rate. And I want to know at what point the annual yield exceeds the annual interest rate for a CD of $2,000. Okay, so notice that all of these have a deposit amount of $2,000, so they're all included as we look for this answer. So for example, if I look at a term of 0.5 years, the annual yield is 0.35, the annual rate is 0.35. So you just ask yourself, is 0.35% less than 0.35%? Well, no, because they're equal, right? So it didn't happen here. It didn't happen at 0.5 years. Ask yourself again on the next line. And remember, we're looking for this piece, the annual yield, to be bigger than the annual rate. So just go down the row until you find a moment at which the annual yield is bigger than the annual rate. And remember, we're looking for the minimum amount of time that this happens. So for example, I can look at 5 years, and I can see that the annual rate is 1.71% and that the annual yield is 1.72%. Well, that's great. So annual yield is bigger than annual rate, just like I wanted. But that doesn't mean that that was the minimum number of years. So in other words, it could have happened earlier. So I want to know the minimum amount of time I would have to invest this money for my annual yield to be larger than my annual rate. So you'll need to check year 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, and 5 to see where this increase of annual yield over annual rate occurs. Once you find it, you're recording the term in years that it took for this to happen.